Flying Ointment and Having Visions. A Belladonna, Datura, Mandrake, Valerian and Cinquefoil trip report by Grimia Inia Drenga. Posted to earwid.org November 16th, 2020. As a practicing occultist very interested in the old-fashioned traditional ideas of witchcraft, as well as primitive shamanism, the Serenity family of plants, Belladonna, Henbane, Datura, Mandrake, etc., have held a strong interest for me for quite some time. The legends of witches and warlocks lathering themselves with the flying ointment and having visions of flying to Mount Brocken to hold these wild revelries and orgiastic rites of demons or the devil himself are widely known and recounted vividly in many medieval witch hunters' documents. I did extensive research before I finally decided to order some Belladonna and Datura off the internet. I looked at a wide variety of articles and experience reports to try and get a general idea of what was a safe psychoactive dose, as opposed to what was a deadly one. After I felt confident and knew what I was doing, I ordered some witch's flying ointment, as well as some Belladonna plant matter, as well as 2 ounces of Datura. The Datura was all parts of the plant: stems, leaves, flowers, and some seeds. The flying ointment contained Belladonna as well as Mandrake, Valerian, and Cinquefoil. First night. When I finally received these items in the mail, I waited until the evening and first lathered a moderate-sized dab onto my temples, wrists, the back of my neck, and also my chest, as recommended by the seller. After about half hour, I began to feel slight effects coming on. The first sign, as many have said before, was the drying out of the throat, the feeling of thirst which drinking cannot quench. Secondly, my vision began to become warped. After about an hour, nothing more happened, so I realised it not had been a high enough dose to experience the psychoactive effects I was after. I had a calming, sedative sensation instead. My heart felt warm, and I looked in the mirror and found my pupils were slightly dilated, but nothing more than that so far. I take it upon myself to pinch a small amount of the Belladonna and 2 Datura leaves, making hot tea out of them. I waited 20 minutes for it to cool and drank all of it down. In all honesty, it didn't actually taste that bad at all, just planty like a lot of herbal teas are. About 45 minutes later, some mild psychoactive effects began to kick in. The effects I got now were mildly psychedelic. I kept hearing what sounded like whispering voices that seemed to come from everywhere, but when I listened closer, I could not catch what they were saying, just ghostly, disembodied, mumbling voices. The more I tried to listen to them to hear what they were saying, they would get quieter or stop like they knew I was listening and didn't want me to hear them. I also kept hearing the sound of a powerful, ghostly, moaning wind, although looking outside, there was no wind. I looked in the mirror again and saw that my pupils were now hugely dilated. Everything seemed to kind of sparkle away, and everything seemed impossibly beautiful. Things that I would normally take for granted or pay no attention to suddenly had this inexplicable allure to them. I was mildly delirious and forgetful, trying to turn off the lights that were already off and forgetting what I was doing, just staring off into space for, well, who knows how long before realising I was standing in place like a statue. After this, no more profound effects occurred. I realised it still hadn't been a high enough dose for a serious trip or mystical experience, so I soon went to bed, as I found it made me very, very tired. Probably partly because of the Valerian and the flying ointment. And to be honest, I had some of the most vivid lucid dreams I've ever had in my life. In these dreams, I was floating down long, dimly lit corridors and making beautiful things and people appear for my own amusement. I remember flying in all my dreams that night. Some of the dreams were even sexual in nature, and when I woke up a couple of times in the night, I found that I was extremely aroused. I did some research on this possible effect of the plants from the Solanaceae family, and found that Belladonna has, in some cases, been used historically as an aphrodisiac for men, but from what I gathered from my research, it is not likely to have this effect on women. When I awoke the next day, I found that my vision was quite blurry, but thankfully was gone by the evening time. The strange thing about this blurry vision is that only certain things were actually blurry. Most things I could actually see clearly, but writing in particular was so blurry that it was almost impossible to read. I couldn't text all day because I just couldn't see what I was writing worth a damn. But like I said, This side effect was gone by the following evening. Second night. When my vision and equilibrium was back to normal the following night, I resolved around 11 PM to try it all again, and this time to use twice as much, hoping to reach the proper dose for a mystical and/or divinatory experience. So, I lathered on 2 liberal dabs of the flying ointment in the same places as before. I even went and made another tea, this time with 2 pinches of the Belladonna plant, and 2 Datura leaves and 1 Datura flower. I drank this tea in about an hour's time, and began to notice the telltale sign of my throat drying out. About half an hour later, I noticed I was having the sensation of doors opening everywhere around me. Not literal doors, mind you, but rather invisible, interdimensional doors. I had the impression that I was becoming aware of another layer of reality spilling over into this one, and although I didn't see them visually, I could perceive entities coming in and out of the doorways and wandering through invisible hallways superimposed over this reality. The general feeling of the presence of others being there around me, moving quickly as if they had no time to waste in getting wherever they were going. I did not get the impression that these entities were either malevolent or benevolent, more neutral in nature, or even totally disinterested in humanity. The faint, inaudible whispering and the strong moaning winds began again. My body began to tingle somewhat in places, and as I was laying on my bed, I kept getting the sensation of floating just above the bed, rather than laying on it. I also got the real strong urge to urinate about every 30 seconds, but when I would try, nothing or almost nothing would come out, and even when it did, it was a strain. The tropane alkaloid containing plants are known for causing this side effect. It's not at all painful, just slightly annoying. I experienced none of the nausea or vomiting others have reported of this. In fact, I felt quite good. It actually seemed to make me very hungry, although eating was surely impossible. I tried to eat some goldfish crackers, and although they tasted ridiculously amazing, the texture in my arid, dry mouth and throat was like sand and was very, very difficult to swallow. I had to wash it down with water. So, after this, I just entirely gave up on eating. But being so thirsty, I kept on drinking water, and found that I needed to take small sips because if I gulped it, which I was very tempted to do, I would feel like I was starting to choke on it. Once again, and even more so than the night before, I found myself delirious and forgetful, wandering around and then stopping for what seemed like a long while, lost in trance. And then, suddenly, I would wake up and half realise I'd just been staring into space for who knows how long. I did some scrying, which is gazing into a black mirror made of obsidian, for the purpose of divination, and in my trance state, I had a vision of floating across vast space and time to visit my lover, who was about 2 hours away from me. I saw him clear as day in the mirror, and I gave him loving, sensual energy, and also took some of his, which is a practice of psychic vampirism, and energy exchange. Whether this was real or simply a hallucinatory effect, no one could ever really know. But I will say, it seemed as real as anything ever could. After I was done with that, I wandered around, finding that my balance was atrocious and I nearly fell or ran into things several times. I also recall suddenly bursting into hysterical laughter at some profound revelation in my mind, although I do not actually remember what it was, unfortunately. The sense of time I was experiencing right now was rather warped as well, and time seemed to be going very, very slowly. I remember watching an hour-and-a-half long movie called Mr. Jones, which seemed somehow absurdly profound to me at the time, but the movie, well, it seemed to go on for hours. I didn't know what time it was, because my vision was too blurred to read digital clocks. I only became vaguely aware of how late it was when I ventured into the bathroom for about the millionth time and saw the dim light of morning shining in through the window. So I went to bed, very tired once again, and once again had very vivid, semi-lucid dreams. But now, this time, they were mostly unpleasant. Some were even nightmarish. I remember one of them involving me looking into the minds of many of my friends and family members, and discovering what they truly thought and felt about me. And most of all, it was not only unpleasant, but very mean. I remember screaming and crying and fighting with my mother in one of them. She was acting cruel and evil, very much unlike how she has ever acted in real life for the most part. She was calling me foul, derogatory names like faggot and things like that. In this dream, she hated me for being a homosexual, but in real life this hasn't been an issue since my young teenage years. I think that one was more of a psychological remnant of bitterness and resentment about things that happened between me and her in the distant past, which I suppose I've never actually fully come to terms with. I don't really remember much about the rest of the dreams, except for one, which thankfully wasn't a nightmare. I saw my mother going out on the porch and unplugging the Halloween lights I had put up for a decoration because it was going to rain. And then I saw her getting into a car and going to the grocery store. This was nothing epic or profound, but when I awoke I found that she had in fact done both of those things. Psychic dream, or coincidence? Was this an out-of-body experience in which I was following my mother around, watching what she was doing? Well, I couldn't say. Believe what you want to believe. The next day, or today, I awoke and found my vision was blurred twice as bad, which makes sense because I did take twice as much. It is 12:30 at night now, and my vision is still blurred over 24 hours later, to the point that I could not even read text, let alone respond to them. I had to write this as a Word document in huge print just to be able to see it, and then copy and paste it. All in all, I would say this was a pleasant experience, although I still didn't quite reach the level that I wanted, and next time I plan on doubling the dose again. I must say, I am a fan. I know I'll definitely be doing it again sometime. Of course, it must be said that I do not endorse anyone doing this plant solely for the purpose of getting high, because it really isn't about that. I believe in a certain kind of animism, and I think that the spirit or essence of these plants knows when the user's intentions are pure and sacred, or simply vulgar, recreational pleasure-seeking, and it will treat the user accordingly.